Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success, and in our current climate, maximize safety while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. This week, we're chatting with Cynthia Wallesz of C&G's Wild Alaska Salmon and Caw Consulting about strategic planning for your market or your business. I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I'm a longtime farmers market manager, Vendor 101 co-teacher, and education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active farmers market manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for our new Farmers Market Pros membership program.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Loco Canopies. Whether you need a sturdy but simple market tent at a startup price, or a fully customized canopy printed with your logo to stand out at the farmers markets you attend, Loco Canopies can help. We actually have a beautiful, eye-catching yellow welcome booth at the market we manage, with our market logo on the peak and EBT Welcome Here on the borders. It really stands out. It was produced by Loco Canopies 2 years ago, and it's still growing strong. Need a new canopy for your business or your market? Contact lococanopies.com. That's LOCO canopies.com, and tell them the Farmers Market Pros sent you. See, if we were Intense, is it a tent? Is it a canopy? Is it a gazebo? Should we be calling this Canopy Conversations?
Loco gazebos.
in the UK, they call them gazebos. They don't even know what you mean when you say tent. We would have to call this gazebo gab.
That's right.
Right?
We're rebranding. We're in the gab shed.
Not.
No. Loco Canopies, though, and I love our Loco Canopy tent. And if you have to open it up every week, let me tell you, it's a breeze.
Yeah, and people ask about it all the time.
Yeah.
Our customers love it. It's easy for people to find us. But it does say info on it, so sometimes people are just like, tell me about things. I'm just like, can you ask a specific question? You don't just have information.
What's going on in San Diego?
Yeah.
We're in general info.
Yeah.
All right. We love Loco Canopies. All right, everyone. Well, welcome back to Tent Talk tonight. Well, getting ahead of myself. Today, we're talking with Cynthia Wallesz of C&G's Wild Alaska Salmon and Caw Consulting. Cynthia spends summers in Alaska harvesting and processing wild salmon, and the rest of the year selling that fish at the Boise Farmers Market. On the consulting side, she helps farmers markets and food makers with strategy, grants, and business development. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. Oh, it's already so fun to be here and see your voices, see you on this video along with hearing the voices. I've been listening to the podcast, so it's fun to see this in action, and I appreciate being here.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you on today, too.
Yeah, thanks so much, Cynthia. So just to get started, we always like to ask our guests, as you know, because you're a listener, just to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into fishing, and how you chose the Boise Farmers Market to sell your Alaskan fish.
Yeah, so I became a fisherman because maybe an old story is I met a guy.
Oh, one of those.
We fell in love, and he's my now husband, and he was a fisherman. So when I moved to Alaska to be an archaeologist from Idaho, I had long stretches of time off, so I was able to go fishing with him during those off times. So I just kind of kept at it since then. And as far as, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying I just love that. I love the idea of being out on a boat, fishing. I know it's not as glamorous as people think it is, but it just seems so lovely.
And then she met a guy.
Oh, there is another fish in the sea.
Okay, guys.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They could go on forever, so you have to cut them off.
They could go on and on.
You gotta reel us in.
Stop.
So then do you go back to Boise to sell fish because that's from where you're from originally? Is that how you have that connection?
I'm not from Boise originally, and my husband is not either. So when we were starting to really get tired of the long, wet summer or winters in Petersburg, Alaska, we started shopping around for places to spend the winters. And after years of searching, we chose Boise. And we had been here before because in 2005 and 6, we helped a friend of ours start a business at the farmers market at the time, selling our salmon. So it wasn't under our name, but we were kind of on the scene there for a while. And then on one of our trips to Boise to see if we wanted to move here or not, we ran into Karen Ellis, who was managing the Capital City Market earlier, and then the Boise Farmers Market when it began. So we just ran into her, and she hooked us in. And so we thought, yeah, maybe we should move to Boise. And they have a lot of the infrastructure we need, and we have support here. Karen was excited to have us at the market, so that's how we started.
Cool. I mean, interesting choice to move to Idaho for the winter.
I was going to say, only an Alaskan would move to Idaho for the warm winters. Right?
Hey, it's warmer.
True.
Yeah,
It's all relative. And that's
Comparatively
great to hear
speaking.
that you found the farmers market community there. It is really like when you tap into that, you're like, wow, there's so many cool people. And that's how I felt when I met Kat and Bridget. I was like, whoa, this is this wild industry that was existing the whole time. I just had to find it.
Yeah.
So that's good that you found that there in Boise. So now, what does your schedule look like? Like you spend part of the year in Alaska, part of the year in Boise. How do you figure that out because Boise has a year-round market, correct?
We have a long
No, we don't.
season, but it's not a
Right.
year-round market.
Oh, okay. So how do you balance your
markets-
time?
Right. I'll start by saying the market is closed January, February, and March, which is 3 months when we're here. But so we divide our time. The fishing season is from June through September. So we're gone about 4 months every year. So summer months, fishing in Alaska, and then we're here the rest of the time. So in the off season, when the market isn't going, we're doing home deliveries and we do pop-ups too.
And do you have somebody, like how do you manage it when the market is open in Boise, but you're in Alaska?
Right. We have someone representing us at least once a month. We try to have a little bit of a presence there. So usually a friend or we hire somebody to represent us, and I ship fish down to them, and then they take it from there.
Cool.
And then the market's okay with you missing the other 3 weeks of each month? Are they just used to that at this point because you've been doing it for a while?
Yes, we kind of have to do it that way. It costs so much to air freight it down, and so we're definitely not making our normal profit on it. But it's important to keep in a little bit with our customers and just let them know we're thinking of them and things like that. So the market doesn't seem to have that strict of rules about you have to be there every week. So maybe other markets are different and we're just fortunate. I'm not sure. Oh, okay.
We're nodding our heads. Our market's very strict about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, understanding that, we live on the water, so we have fishermen that can be there.
And
mostly,
another market that I used to work at the Hillcrest Market, we actually had a salmon vendor right next to us. He was a cool guy he had a very similar schedule where he would go and for part of the year he was in Alaska. And I think just because that was so built into that's just the way it works, that I think that he kind of struck a deal with the market managers there of like, I'm going to be out for these months, but I'll be here every single week for these months. And then they were able to kind of plan ahead because it is an annual schedule.
And it's one of those high value products.
Yeah.
Like there may be 10 people growing tomatoes. You're not going to have that many fishermen. So
Yeah.
like anything else at markets, if you're really well differentiated, you may get a little more indulgence from your market manager than you do otherwise.
Yeah.
The customers like it.
Yeah. So obviously, Cynthia, this last year was pretty wild. How did COVID-19 impact your business, both the fishing side of it and the selling side of it?
So the selling side, when COVID hit in March, that's our selling season. And that, of course, was huge because our market closed on March 13th. I believe they announced their closure. And our market was supposed to start at the first Saturday of April. So we were counting on that April and May to be a big time for us to sell our product. And we also sell wholesale and had a few restaurants in Boise that we were selling to. And they, of course, were no longer taking any product at all. So it was a shock, and we had to sit down and figure it out, and also educate ourselves, like everyone was educating themselves about COVID and safety protocols and how are we going to unload the product, because we had about at least 2,000 pounds left of product, which is kind of a lot for us. And we try to keep a bunch for people for the spring. And this time we were like, it was making us pretty nervous. So we have a strong email list and really loyal customers. So I kept in touch with them, and we've always offered home delivery, but it suddenly took off as people were staying home, and we put in some strong, strict safety protocols. So we could communicate those to our customers and say, this is our plan. This is how we're going to do it. And so they knew what to expect. But yeah, we came up with a good system based on some COVID research we had done. And we just kept getting informed with however and wherever we could. And people were very gracious and really were ready for home deliveries at this point. And they quickly were realizing, wow, I've got to cook everything at home now. And so.
And then I know Alaska was really cautious about letting people in for a while there. So was your fishing season interrupted as well?
The fishing season was not interrupted.
Interesting.
Yes, it was touch and go, though. Like, is it going to happen or is it not going to happen? And so it was pretty stressful in that regard as well. I'm active in the industry there, so I was aware of some of the conversations happening. But in the end, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game decided to go forth with the season as planned. So that was very, very good. And but Alaska did have some strict protocols, and then each town had their own and has their own. And so when we arrived, at the time we arrived, we had to go into lockdown for 2 weeks before we could do anything. So we weren't able to access our gear, for instance. And so we had to ask someone to get our gear for us and bring it to us. And we were allowed to go to our boat and back, but no stores, no nothing. So it was quite strict.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you were able to have that season. Yeah. I know that probably would have been pretty devastating for that whole industry had it not gone forward. So that's good news. So we had the pleasure of hearing from the Boise Farmers Market manager, Tamara Cameron, this year at Intense, the Farmers Market Conference. And she's really awesome. We've had her on the podcast before, and she filled us in about the online order system for their farmers market and how she implements the power of dozens and hundreds of volunteers, which is really impressive. But we were just wondering, what it was like for you to, as a vendor, getting set up on that online marketplace, and kind of how it's been for you. Was that a difficult adjustment? Do you like it? Kind of, what is the vendor's perspective on offering online ordering for farmers markets?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but my experience has been mixed, I would say. With the actual platform, I feel like it's finally going okay. The second week was really horrible. There's just been a lot of, which maybe we don't want to say that actually, but yeah, the technology was not friendly. And I'm not totally ignorant as far as technology goes. So I was really feeling for some of my farmer friends who I know struggle with technology. And I would write Tamara and tell her, and I know I wasn't really alone in some of these issues. And eventually they did level out. Although I did have this awful problem, which we've only done one market so far this spring. So I've only used it once in 2021. But last summer and fall, I had this awful thing when I would be putting my weights in, because salmon is sold by weight. So you enter the weights into the program when you're done packing everyone's order. And the weights would just change. I would be looking at the screen and the weights would change in front of my eyes. And I was freaking out. Yes. And so that first started happening this summer. And I called Tamara in panic, because I know market managers are part therapists and part everything.
Yes,
else.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
So she got on. She was able to get on to my account, and we did it together. But it wasn't just me. She saw it changing also in front of her eyes. So it was frightening. And it didn't happen last week. And I'm so glad, because it just kind of freaks me out to think that maybe my customers are getting charged incorrectly.
Gotcha.
So
I've heard that on a lot of the online platforms, that's been one of the biggest challenges, is things that are sold by weight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that seems to be the area that they have the toughest time getting to operate consistently. So
Yeah, sort of like a buy item kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, but it's hard to do that with meat and with fish and that kind of thing. So yeah, that I've gotten that feedback before about a variety of platforms. That's really the trickiest part.
Yeah. As far as like sales or customers, have you noticed a difference in, this last season versus years prior, in terms of like people ordering more, people ordering less, or have you noticed a
good
change in
question.
trend?
Yes. Well, one thing that's really interesting about the online ordering is that you learn people's names, and you didn't really before. And it's more about faces. So I started tracking people's names and how often they would order, and I started putting in like little things in the bag, and just get like Christmas, I gave everyone a gift of a spice pack gift. And so I was trying to trace, like if someone is on my email list, I didn't want to pester them about please be on my email list. So I didn't want to send them my little note about that, for instance. So it's been very different of working with people's names, and it's their last names too. so it's a different relationship. And of course we really miss the in-person. And selling seafood, it's still a mystery for a lot of people, how to cook seafood. We've spent a lot of our early markets just teaching people about seafood and educating them. And we're constantly doing that. But I'll never forget our second winter market. We were by a meat vendor, and she came up and she just said, I just can't believe how much education you have to do about seafood. And people just come up and they know exactly what kind of meat they want, and it's Idaho. And so
it's not just Idaho, it's America.
Yeah.
If you go to Europe, there's so many more different kinds of fish and things in the markets there, but those folks grow up cooking fish at home. And I can't remember what the statistic is exactly, but there's a tiny fraction of seafood in America that's cooked at home. Most people eat seafood in restaurants. And so it's a huge education process for any of our vendors that sells fish to teach people how to cook fish. And people that think they don't like fish, oftentimes it's just that they're afraid of it. They're intimidated because they don't know what to do with it at home.
Right.
Yeah. Cynthia, I think that's so interesting what you were saying about people's names versus faces. And I think that hopefully is one of the silver linings of COVID-19 in the future is just that vendors are getting to know their customers in a different way. And I had a similar experience this year planning our conference, because usually we see everybody at the conference and they're wearing a name tag and we get to know them over the couple of days where we kind of learn their personalities. But this year I was just looking at everybody's email addresses and names. So I feel like when people email me now, I'm like, oh, it's this person. But it is kind of this, I don't know, just a shift in relationship.
Yeah,
So,
a little bit different way to know. And on like a data collection kind of front, I guess if you weren't, at the market, you'd have to say, okay, this regular customer who like, maybe I know his name is Jim or something, he gets, 3 pounds of fish or whatever, like anecdotally kind of information. But now you can be like, okay, I can just search for Jim and see how much fish he's buying from me and like, who are my regular customers? Because sometimes I feel like even at the market, I'm like, oh, this is a regular market shopper. But then it's like, oh, well, they come once a month. They're just really chatty with me.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oh, there's this like quiet person that comes every single week and they don't come and talk to me, but they're at the market every week. But it's like that hard data of like a person having to like enter their name on a form and like place an order. But then you can look at it later and see how much they ordered. That's an interesting...
It's valuable.
Really valuable information for businesses, I think. So I hadn't even thought about that vendors were getting that kind of raw data. It's awesome.
Interesting point.
Yeah.
And some people were like, where is this guy? And why isn't he showing up at the market? And so it's kind of, we have like 5 people like that were regulars, and we're like, where did he go?
Yeah.
So, or he or something. Or they.
I hope they're okay.
Yeah. But now you have their email address, so you can ask them.
Are you cool?
Are you okay? So you said you were also doing some pop-ups. So how is that working, and how do you let your customers know where you'll be for that? Is it through your email list or social media, or how do you do those?
It is mostly through email, the email list, and a little bit of Facebook. And they usually go pretty well. They go better if other vendors are there as well, and it's more fun and just a bigger draw. And it's just a nice way to finally talk to people again. So that's been really nice. And our last one was just us, and it was pretty slow, but each customer, we were able to talk with each person for a good 5 minutes. And that just does not happen at a farmer's market, right? So that was really nice. And I appreciated that.
Where are you doing them?
We have done them in different places. And lately we've been doing them near where the Boise Farmers Market site is.
So just in a parking lot or at a business or,
Parking lot.
Because is the Boise, so they're not doing any in-person market for this season?
Right.
Oh, okay.
They're talking about
not
opening
sure
this
yet.
year. The last thing I saw from Tamara was they're looking at, or on their website or something, is that they're looking at opening in person this year, maybe July and August.
Oh, okay.
She said they were polling their vendors to see who's comfortable with being face-to-face, but they never did open last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Just pick up.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how some vendors would be kind of ready to get back in person at this point. So those pop-ups could be helpful while you're waiting for the market to get back up and rolling. And then, so with fishing and processing and selling at markets, all those things, you are still finding time for consulting, which is amazing. Sound very busy already. And then one of the things you do as a consultant is teach markets and small businesses how to do it all, right? Because clearly you have a handle on that. So how do you keep all the all those different things that you're doing with the fishing and the markets and onlines and all that stuff? How do you kind of keep all that going without getting overwhelmed? And how should we all decide what's most important to focus on? Because that's kind of, I think, what we're all doing. It feels like a New Year's was kind of moved up to like April this year. So we're all like looking at the year ahead and kind of planning out what to focus on and what to prioritize. So how do you handle that? And can you tell us a little bit about your consulting that you do?
Sure. Well, just hearing you list all the things I'm doing sounds a little overwhelming.
Now you're stressed.
Sorry for pointing that out.
No, that being organized really, really helps. And the big thing I do where I strive in consulting is helping people strategize their goals and then beforehand their mission and their vision and their values. So once you have kind of a handle on these things, then and an organizational structure to support them, then it's not so bad. It's not so overwhelming. And but it's important to know where your ground is as far as your vision and your mission and your values. And then from there, you can set your goals as a team. And so you're right, I have a bunch of balls in the air. So I have kind of goals for the fishing business, for the selling part, for the catching part. And then I have consulting goals as well. And so I just kind of look at them all, and personal goals, of course. And so then I look at them all, and I tend to look at things more on a weekly basis instead of a daily basis or a monthly basis. And then because I'm a fisherman, I'm seasonal, I think seasonally as well. So I like looking at things on a weekly basis, like what do I want to accomplish? If I look at my goals, what do I want to accomplish this week as far as C&G's Wild Alaska Salmon or call consulting? What do I need to do this week?
That's what we're all just planning and talking about. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's helpful for us too, because as market managers, it's like we have every Saturday, that's kind of like the pinnacle of the week. And then after that, it just kind of like starts all over again. So for me, I think it's easier for me to think about things on a weekly basis as well. And I think especially as a as a fisherman, you kind of just have that seasonality built in. So you're like, okay, now I'm in fisherman mode. Then you're in, market vendor mode, and you can just kind of flip flop between them.
And I imagine that applies for a lot of market managers and vendors as well. Not quite so much for us seasonally, I think. Although I guess we work around conference season and then not conference season. But our markets are year-round, so we don't have that feel for the seasonality of things that some of the market managers do who have seasonal markets.
Yeah, and we don't even have like a busy season, because I know I've talked to other market managers who are year round, but like in the winter it's a little slower. And even our weekday markets, when they're at night, like in the winter and it was rainy, it would be a little bit slower. But the Saturday morning market in San Diego, like that's busy.
Yeah, people are always, what's your high seson? It's like January to December.
Yeah. You're like, whenever it's 73 and sunny.
Yeah. Which is all day every day. Like, what about the winter? I'm like, that's a holiday season. It's insane. So kind of keeping a focus on like I think the weekly assessment thing, that's really important to do. And then you've done some consulting with the Boise market itself, is that right?
I have, yes. I've been able to facilitate 2 of their strategic plans, and that's been really fun to watch them grow in their process. And things are so much different now with new leadership and of course the drive-through market, and it's just changed the whole structure of that organization. So that's been really fun work.
When did you do the strategic planning sessions with Boise?
It has been a while. I want to say the first one was maybe 2015 and then 2017.
Okay, so it was pre-COVID.
Super pre.
It was, yes. But now that I think of it, Oh, I should know this, maybe how long the market has been. It was, maybe its second year was the first time, and then 3 years or so after. So the dates might be a little off that
Yeah,
I just.
but that's smart. It sounds like it's good to do that initially and then revisit it again a
Yeah.
few years later.
Really
that
smart,
sounds like
yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah.
Definitely. And with COVID, things are changing so rapidly that I've been recommending, and other coaches and consultants recommend, doing a strategic plan more often, just because things
more
change.
often. Interesting.
More often.
I was waiting to hear the end of that sentence and hear if you were suggesting doing it more often or just putting it off, because who can deal with that when you're dealing with COVID on top of everything else? And that's kind of one of my questions is, with everything that's going on at once with COVID, how do business owners or market managers, market organizations find time to have those meetings and establish goals and develop a strategic plan and then turn that ship when mostly we're just bailing right now? We're just trying to keep the water out of the boat.
Or the lifeboat.
Well, I would say that dedicating the time to do some of these foundational things actually saves you time down the road. So if a group were to dedicate a good few hours establishing some of these foundational things, whether it's a strategic plan or backing up first and getting a mission and vision established, that then when you revisit those things, when, to use your ship analogy, when things are really rocking and rolling and you're trying to hang on, then you have more direction, because that's what those things are designed for.
So you know where those rails are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's nice.
Yeah.
It's important, though, that when you're designing these things, that everyone is at the table. So if it's a business, that everyone is there, employees are there for input, or if it's farmers market folks, that staff and board are there. So then when you need to all gather together and make a difference, then the mission and vision and goals that you came up with, you did together. So there's no squabbling, should I say.
So for the Boise Farmers Market, for instance, when you say everybody should be at the table, was that staff and board, or was it also farmers and vendors that were involved in that?
It was staff and board. So vendors are represented on the board at the market, and so.
Yeah, which I think is fairly common. We're sort of unusual here in that the actual market operations is a benevolent dictatorship, and there is not a board. And then the nonprofit that we work with has a big board that has some input, but it's very much not involved with operations. It's only involved with fundraising and how those funds are used and things, but not so much with the day-to-day operation of the markets. But I know that a lot of markets are heavily directed by boards that involve a lot of farmers and vendors on the boards as well. So that's interesting. So when it comes to identifying your values, developing a mission statement and a vision, is that only relevant when you have a big team, when you have a lot of stakeholders, or is that important for family businesses and really small organizations too?
I'd almost argue it's more important for family businesses and smaller businesses. Being in a family business, you definitely want to keep things smiling at home, right? So if you really have your business organized and your intentions set and your mission and your vision already laid out, then it's easier. I'm not saying that very well, but
no, but I hear you. It's a little bit like when we talk about we do a vendor 101 class where we're training new vendors, and especially when we talk about either fundraising by bringing in family money or working with various members of your family, we always talk a lot about getting everything in writing and making sure that you're going in the same direction and that you've reached some agreements on our net is your net income reinvested or is it distributed to the group? Because otherwise, the way we always phrase it is, at some point in time, you're going to have a really miserable Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's great. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. It helps people kind of think about that, like, underlying thing. So it's like you can't, if you have a family business, you're not separating those two things. Like, you're separating them because you're not talking about work at the dinner table. Hopefully you're not talking about family stuff at work too much, but really at the heart of it, if those two things are really important to you, you want to kind of have those conversations and kind of keep those conversations constant, like you were saying, like maybe having more strategic conversations with each other and making sure that you stay on the same page.
Keep refreshing those.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is a family business that I get to be a part of, but you
Just
guys have
our surrogate family member.
That's right.
But like, I think you guys have such clear boundaries and a strong dynamic because you really are very one in your vision of the market. So things don't get personal when the market isn't working. You're just like, okay, we need to clarify what this issue is. It's not a personal thing or a familial thing. It's just, we got to get on the same page of this operations issue.
Like, we know what our mission is for
Yeah.
the market. And so we kind of stay focused on that and not really like, well, she didn't do something or she didn't do something. It's more like keeping those strategy conversations. So I feel like Kat and I have a lot of good, and we've worked together for like 25 years of our life. So I feel like it wasn't always like this, but we've come to like talk about strategy and talk about vision and mission so often that it helps streamline those kind of conversations. So,
and I could see, Cynthia, how you think it's important, especially during COVID, to have some of these clarifying vision conversations because, in our conversations at the conference too, when talking about having online ordering systems or drive-through markets, some markets just decided, hey, that's not really within our mission to have an online ordering system, or the community that we serve isn't really interested in that, or the vendors that we represent, that's not feasible for them. And I think that markets that had a clear vision of who they serve and who are participating, it just kind of makes making those decisions a little bit more easy because you're not just trying to put a Band-Aid on the situation. You kind of have a little bit more, higher level clarity of ultimately who are you.
Exactly.
And if you never have those conversations, you might end up making decisions that don't really work for your market because you're just trying to get through the crappy situation.
Decide who you are during chaos, which is never a good idea.
Right.
And I think some of the businesses, or at least here in San Diego, I've noticed some restaurants that have done really, really well during this COVID time. They were just like, hey, this is who we are. We're sticking to this. We're going to only do takeout even when we can open for dine-in, whatever. And they've just been like, we're the takeout people. And they did it really, really well. And it's obvious that they just had a very clear vision of their goals and
what
who
they
they
want to
are.
accomplish and how they're going to serve the community.
Right.
Yeah, very much.
And they stayed focused, like you said. And I'm glad to hear that you feel like your relationship keeps improving. I think that's important too. And so continuing to have those conversations must help. The higher level clarity conversations must help improve. Hopefully we're all improving every year in everything we do, right?
That's the goal, even during this last bumpy year.
Yes. I feel like that's why it's just important to have those conversations during the good times so that when the bad times happen, you can kind of take a longer view.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do feel like when COVID hit, I was like, okay, we're shut down. Let's take a break. And Kat's like, we're not taking a break. I'm on the phone with the mayor. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, obviously my kids were at home, so I was kind of worried about that. But I was like, all right, well, this is what we've talked about before, that we're open no matter what. That is our clear mission. We've already established that as our mission. So I was like, well, that is our mission. I got to get on this boat with kids.
I think this whole last year was the definition of no matter what.
It was the definition of no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's also because, as Cynthia is saying, farmers market managers are your psychotherapist. And, I was getting a lot of calls from small farmers that said, we've planted, this stuff's ready to harvest. If we don't sell it, I'm going to lose my farm. Talking about, having conversations about suicide with farmers. It was so rattling, and there didn't seem to me to be a choice. No. We are open no matter what, and that includes the pandemic. So off we go.
Yeah, or the same thing with fishermen. It's like, I caught these fish.
Right.
They're ready to go.
I can't just put them on a shelf until the pandemic's over.
Yeah. Or like it's fishing season. It's not like the salmon are going to be like, well, I'll come back for you in a little bit. I see you're having a pandemic right now.
We'll just do double next year. How's that sound?
That'd be okay.
Yeah, right.
Man.
It was defining it.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, I feel like we could talk to you about
could go on forever,
and all these things forever. Yeah.
Cynthia, do you have just a couple of simple, just one or two first simple steps that if people are saying, oh, I'm just really busy, I don't know how I'm going to take on a whole huge, week or two of figuring out my strategic goals, are there just a couple of one or two little steps that people can take to kind of get started on the process and start that whole thought process and conversation?
Sure. Well, I made a document to help folks with this very thing. So I sent it to you earlier. It's called Aligning Your Team with 6 Key Steps. I think that's what it's called. So I'd suggest downloading that and then carving out a few hours and going through that with your team and just seeing how it goes.
Yeah, great. So we'll have that for our listeners and for our members over at Farmers Market Pros. We'll be able to send them that document with 6 steps to take to kind of get started on that conversation and think about where you're heading. And then if you want to dive in a little deeper, we'll have Cynthia's contact information there for you too. So
yeah, great place to start though.
Yeah,
sure.
Good place to start.
Yeah.
It's been really nice spending time with you today, Cynthia.
Yeah,
It's been really fun. Thanks so much.
Get to see the inside view, the behind the scenes of how a tent talk is made.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love it
that's
when
great.
listeners or guests.
Always.
All right, well, we will talk to you soon, and eventually we'll make it out to the Boise Market because we told Tamara we'd come out and check it out. So hopefully it's on a week that you're there. Maybe we'll touch base before we head out.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to go during the winter, though.
Yes.
That's right. Fall.
Yeah.
Late
Fall.
Yep.
That's all right. We'll get borrow a coat from somebody.
And
All right,
I hope to
Cynthia.
make it to San Diego someday.
Yes, please
sure.
do. Be nice, warm. This is a real warm winter for you.
Yeah, right.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Cynthia.
Okay. Thanks again.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Loco Canopies for providing farmers, food makers, and farmers markets with sturdy, affordable market tents, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Find your next canopy at lococanopies.com. We're looking forward to hearing from you if you attended Intense, the Farmers Market Conference in March, about what you got out of it. What did you love? What would you like to see more of? And go ahead, tell us what you missed. We can take it. Look at the email that you received after the conference and hit the button to answer your conference survey. Can't find that email? We know how that is too. We get way too many. Go to Instagram and check the link tree there in our profile, or go to our private Facebook group and find the link to the conference survey. We'd love to hear from you.
Farmers markets are all about community, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Connect with people just like you from various parts of the country and share what's happening in your area in the terrific conversations over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're just getting started in farmers markets, check out our Vendor 101 online course at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcast, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you are listening on YouTube, give us that thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will have another great episode next week, so tune in.